Welcome to Middlesex Schools Cricket Podcast. And today's guest, I'm proud to welcome Mr. Alan Watkinson. He started as a teacher and turned into a sports leader who contributed immensely in promoting sports in schools. This particular podcast really look at various challenges, state school level apparatus for sports, as well as all his experiences teaching as well as working with elite athletes. One of his famous students is Mo Farah, and we will able to hear more inside through his interaction with him and his stories. So welcome to MSC. So Alan, welcome to Middlesex Schools Cricket Podcast, and thank you very much for coming and meeting us and discussing various things which has happened and what are the different plans. So many of locals know you as a school teacher, and nationally you are known as Mo Farah's school teacher who has pushed him into getting further in his sports. How would you describe yourself, and what are the inspirations behind it when you started?
I think I'm passionate about children and about opportunities for children to be the very best they can be in whatever area that they find and in whatever area that they enjoy. I remember going to school, a comprehensive school in Nottinghamshire. It's quite a tough area. I was from a middle class background, and sport was the thing that really saved me and got me through it. It was something that I absolutely loved. I lived in the PE department, and it was a bit of a natural progression really to move on to teaching the subject myself. And I used that really as a base because I got so many opportunities there. I used that as a base for my philosophy, which was really about giving every child an opportunity, trying to find something for every child, and to push them beyond the school gates to a community club or somewhere where they could get the very best of that and have something that they could enjoy for life.
So did you have any sporting career, or did you play?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was the thing that kept me going. I don't think there was any sport that I didn't play for the school that the school did. I played rugby, I played football, I played cricket, I played hockey, I played basketball. Predominantly, though, the sports I played for a club at were cricket and hockey. So cricket was my passion. Cricket was a thing that I really loved. As a child growing up, I'd throw bowl a ball at the wall and hit it myself, and put chairs around the garden as fielders, keep score, and any involvement that I could have with the cricket, I absolutely loved. We always used to go to test match for one game every year. We went to a Nottinghamshire-Yorkshire game and sat on the same seat as Brian Clough, and got talking to him, and his son Nigel was there running around as well. I just absolutely loved everything to do with cricket, but played every sport going.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, yeah. When is the time when you thought that now is the time to make this accessible to others?
From the sort of very beginning of my career, really, that was the experience that I had at school, and the school always creating opportunities for you to go to local clubs and to experience sport in different environments, and they wanted to get everybody involved. They believed passionately in it, and it really stemmed from that, and has gone on through my career as a teacher. That was what I was always about. I actually went more down the pastoral route, so I was a head of year. I was never really a head of PE, and I found that actually the two things go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. If you've got an unhappy child that has got problems at home, or problems that they're suffering and struggling with, then their accessibility to sport and their desire and motivation to play the sport isn't as great as if they have got a sort of clear run at things. And also that sort of clear run, clear mind, sort of happy, active child is more likely to be academically successful as well. So it was quite early on that I got that the holistic development of the child is so important in terms of their ability to enjoy physical activity.
So Alan, I mean, obviously lots of people know you as one of the coaches of Mo Farah from a very young age, and there's been a documentary that came out about his life and your impact with him. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about his journey and your contribution to his journey?
How long have you got? I mean, it's just an incredible story, really. Anybody who's seen the documentary will its fact is often stranger than fiction, and this is a case in point. So Mo came to us as a 11-year-old. He was always in trouble. He didn't speak English. He loved PE, he loved sport, he loved physical activity, he loved break times and lunch times and being able to kick a football around. But everywhere else was a total disaster for him. He was involved in fights. He was getting into trouble with teachers. And PE and the sport was his safe place, and that's how he gradually learned the language, built up relationships and friendships, joined the local athletics club. But what was staggering was the actual difficulties that he had and the problems that he had. So for those that haven't seen the documentary, basically he was brought over and put into domestic servitude. He was effectively a slave for a family that had brought him over to look after their children whilst they lived in England. And he came to me after about a year and a half of being at the school with a friend who spoke the language better than he did, and explained that this was the situation, and that this was just an issue and a problem that was so large and so daunting that you think there are things that you can never get over, you can never solve. And I went to the head teacher. He said, "Well, I really don't know what to do other than we have to report this to social services," which we did. And they were very supportive, and they found him somewhere else to live, and clearly did not push it any further than that, because the authorities didn't get involved. It was a different time. And then there was the issue of actually getting him his passport, because as an international athlete he had to compete abroad, so we had to jump through so many hoops to try and get that to happen. And that was a story in itself, because he was offered the opportunity to go to Florida with the British Olympic youth camp, and that changed his life, because he came back having experienced that, thinking that, I am an athlete and this is what I really want to do. Whereas before he thought, well, this is a bit of fun, prefer football really, would prefer to be able to play football than run, but I guess I'm winning all the time, so it's quite nice. And if we hadn't got over those problems, then it probably wouldn't have happened. And he speaks a lot about it now. But what I think everyone talks about what I did for him, but actually what he did for me shaped my thinking. And my thinking now is obviously that there isn't anything that can't be solved. There isn't an issue that can't be resolved without with the right sort of passion and the right support. Then you can achieve anything. You can move mountains. And the fact that he's gone from being in a school like Feltham Community College at the time, another school that with its challenges, being the least likely to achieve out of 240 children, the most likely to have a really difficult life, to being the international superstar, Knight of the Realm, and national treasure is just a remarkable story that shaped sort of how I think about things now.
So Alan, I like going through the story. When I saw the documentary, I was really engrossed in the whole thing. But I think one of the most amazing things about you, and you're very happy to share credit with other people and things like that. I think I had a conversation with you once, and we were talking about difficult children, and that was before I'd seen the documentary. And you started talking to me about, no one's a lost person. There's always room to help people, understand them, get their background, get the story. And at first I kept thinking, when I chat to teachers and things, lots of them will be like, oh, that one's difficult, don't worry about that one, forget it. And then after that, and then seeing the documentary, I was like, wow, okay. So the next time I started seeing children, you know, a bit like that, I started to talk to them about completely different things, find out about them, and suddenly you find that they're more engaged. And I thought that, you know, if there was nothing that came out of, you know, that story beyond that, it's amazing the amount of people's lives that can be impacted from us just taking the time to get to know them, to understand them, and try and help them. It might take a bit of a while, but I love the fact that you went not just and did your normal role, you went above and beyond, and you've helped someone really change their life. But also, if you hear Mo these days when he talks about stuff, he's very grateful for it. But he comes across as a very kind, genuine human being that likes to share and give his time and help others develop as well. So I think the impact that you've had on his life is amazing. I think from a coaching point of view, absolutely opened my eyes. There was a lot of people that I'd kind of written off myself, and I've really changed my view thanks to your contributions and conversations with me. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you, you know, to you on that note as well.
Oh, well, that's great, and it you know, it is an absolute pleasure, and it's something that I learnt from that, and that, you know, and I think that's the whole point. We pass things on, and you know, coming back to my childhood, I got treated really well by my PE teachers, and they took a real interest in me, and I wanted to pass that on, and now Mo's passing it on, and it's brilliant. You know, one of the things I've always said, you know, all of his Olympic medals and world medals, I'm so proud of the person that he's become, as much as the athlete that he was. And he's now the National School Sport Ambassador for the Youth Sport Trust. He's got a national mission to try and get children active, and you know, he's giving back, and that, you know, that gets what you, I think, find as a teacher as you get a little bit older, is these things get passed on down the generations, and the impact is you know, staggering to see.
So when you first met Mo, I mean, was there any sort of indication that perhaps he could be the sort of athlete that he developed into? What stage in his, you know, development did you actually sort of think, hang on a minute, he's probably got something here?
Athletically, quite early on. So he had that sort of attitude that was different. You know, he had this absolute desire and you know, and drive to win. You know, it was something that he thrived on. He loved winning and didn't like losing. But also he was different in that he never seemed to dwell on those two things. So in the euphoria of the moment or the disappointment of the moment, you know, you saw the passion and joy in his face or the disappointment on his face. But almost within a minute, it was all forgotten, and it was you know, right, okay, what's next? Or okay, that didn't go so well, but there's a reason for it. So you know, we can move on. And you know, I know if I did half the things that he'd done, if I did something well, you know, people would, you know, bore people to death with it until they told me to shut up. But he never talked about it. He never talked about his successes. He never talked about his failures. He just got on, which was very different and unusual. Athletically, I always say, you know, people say, how on earth did you spot Mo Farah? I said, well, you know, we put him in a race and he won it. We put him in another race and he won that. And we put him in another race and he won that by a minute. And you know, that wasn't a difficult thing to spot. But I think what we don't realise is that there are so many barriers to success that are beyond the actual sporting side of their life that we need to dig deeper. And I think what I like about Middlesex schools cricket is that it isn't just about, you know, how do you play a cover drive, or, you know, what's the best technical position to be in to release the ball when you're trying to bowl fast. It's not just about that. There is, those elements are there, but it's the holistic development of the person that you're working with. It's the things like the psychology of it, the management of emotions when you're playing, the sportsmanship and the important side of the social side of the game, and the benefits they can get from that. And I got so much from cricket myself that when it wasn't explicitly taught, you know, it was just something that naturally happened. But I think you make so much more of something when you make it explicit, and you don't leave those things to chance. You know, I met a government minister a couple of years ago who came to observe a PE lesson. He just let them run around, and they'll get those things. They'll get the confidence if they're allowed to run around and do it. They'll get those social skills if they're allowed to do it. And I was with another teacher, and he said to him, no, they won't unless we explicitly teach them. Rubbish. And you think, oh, God, this is the person that's the school's minister, and he doesn't get it. What hope have we got? Fortunately, we have a different regime now. But it is so important to have that sort of holistic development. And I think, Mo's development through the side of his running was the amount of time I was able to spend with him. And the amount of time that I was able to listen to him, because I think that's the other thing. We try to solve people's problems without knowing what their problems are, and that's really key. But what you said, Prash, about taking interest in a kid makes them feel special. If they feel special, that's that they're so much more motivated to do well.
I think that. This is very important topic, which is very close to our hearts. I think when we discussed this about spotting talent or spotting a person who is interested in, because every child develops at different times, and we talked about this. Sometimes some children get shy quite early, and then people try to focus on them. But there are other students who are not so vocal about it or are not there yet in terms of development. How difficult or easy as a teacher, as a coach, for you to look at that side of it and look at those kids who really have potential? Because I can see that you could once you start looking at Mo, you started understanding him better and understanding his abilities better. So you could shape him in the right direction. So what were your experiences like?
I think you learn about things as you go through, and one of the things that you don't realise when you're growing up is that our system is so biased towards the children that physically develop quicker, and what are we missing by doing that? So the rugby players that are 6'2" when they're year 7, they can run through everybody, or they're a great player. Then, well, are they a great player? They're just big and they can run through people because they can't be physically tackled. And I'm aware of somebody that went through that sort of phase of being that size, and they got to 18 and they had no skills or tactics to draw on to support them to get around the player once they found they couldn't run straight through them, and they very quickly fell out of love with the game. But how many other people that weren't that size were they not concentrating on, that actually had maybe better technical ability, but didn't have that physique? I think in cricket you probably see it all the time with the boy that maybe can't hit it off the square yet, because they just physically don't have that strength. But you can see that technically they've got all the things that they need to become a really competent or really good player. And I think we are too results driven from an early age, when we need to forget about who wins. There was a classic example, I think, Prash, when we were at a game at Middlesex schools, and it was at a school ground, and our team had batted first, and we'd got plenty of runs, and it looked like we were going to win. And it ended up going to the last ball, and I can't actually remember if we lost. I think we actually still won the game, but you stayed completely silent, and you didn't try to tell the players what to do. They were under 13, under 14s. The parents were going mad on the sideline about, why aren't they bringing this bowler on? Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? Why is Prash just standing there? And you had to have a conversation with those parents afterwards and say, it's not about the winning and the losing. It's about them having that experience and learning. I can solve the problems for them on the pitch, but if I do that, what's going to happen when I'm not there, or what's going to happen to their development? They're not going to develop and learn as effectively or quickly as they want to. So I think we need to keep our base as wide as we possibly can. We need to keep children interested for as long as we can. We've got to encourage them and make them feel sort of happy about what they're doing. There's a thing called physical literacy, I think, which is often misunderstood, and people think it's just about the fundamental movement skills, and it's absolutely not. It's about people's personal relationship with sport or physical activity, and that personal relationship being kept going for as long as it possibly can. And there's so much to do with the enjoyment of what they do that drives them to continue to do it, and the benefits from what they do that continue to get them to do it. I have always been fortunate enough to be reasonably fit and healthy, and if I find I don't exercise for a little while, then I start to get really down, and exercise is an important part of my life still. But we have the power to make people feel happy, or we have the power to make them feel miserable. And it's one of the, I can't remember who said it, but somebody said it's not what we teach them, it's how we make them feel. That is the most important thing, and I really think that's a very good motif to go by. That's the important thing. Are they smiling? Are they happy and engaged, or are they looking a bit grumpy and not so keen?
Yeah. No, there's some amazing messages in what you just said there. Absolutely brilliant takeaways. I'm just going back to even the match management and stuff. I had a parent yesterday at training, and it was their trial, so they come down, they're a bit worried, how's it going to go? And at the end I was trying to explain stuff to the child in front of the parent and just say, look, have you considered this? And the parent kept telling them, you need to do this and this. And I was like, this is actually the problem, because you keep telling them everything. They don't have to think. When they get on the pitch, they kind of need the instructions, and now they can't be independent thinkers. Like, what are they going to do when they go out to work? Like, how are they ever going to be independent thinkers? So it's really important that we realise that, we've got to develop these things, and like you've mentioned, the results. It's very easy to say we need to beat this team, but are the results really that, or is it the person's development getting to the next stage? I had some messages, when people finish the GCSEs and A-levels, the amount of texts that come in, and these kids don't even play cricket these days, but the parents would be like, got 3 A's or whatever they call it these days, 9s or whatever. But the values that were instilled really helped them, and we're really pleased that the children were in touch with you in the early years. So I think there was a lot of really good messages that you put into that last segment.
And we know I've had experience of that. Obviously, Tom, my son, went through the Middlesex Schools programme and has played cricket from an early age, and I think he's so much better prepared for. When we talked about mock exams, he said, those breathing exercises that I learned, that the way to approach things, it's just like approaching a game of cricket. It's going in with your mind clear, knowing the tactics that you're going to employ. But I think as supporting them to be sort of completely rounded people, that does create the pathway for a clear run at the academics, because their minds are in a much better place. So absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think that goes back to also you just touched upon about motivations, because athletics, for instance, in case of Mo, is not a traditional sport would be taken up. So what are your experiences or what would you say as motivations to young athletes to take up some of this challenge and experiment? Because choosing athletics for Mo would have not come just naturally. He must have got exposed to certain conditions, certain competitions, and then he started realizing. So do you have any of those experiences with other athletes or young athletes?
Yeah, it's a real fine balance, because you see somebody's good at something, and you know that the opportunities that will be there for them if they actually pursue it. And it doesn't always work out. I've had some very, very talented kids that have actually, I don't really fancy it. I'm going to give up. And you don't win every single battle. But I do remember when I was just experiencing my first club game of cricket, and I wanted to get involved. So passionate to get involved in it. And we batted first, and I didn't get a bat. I was batting at number 7 or something, and batting turned out to be the thing that I was best at. And they made sure that I got a game, and we were winning the game quite comfortably until I came on to bowl. And I think I put every single ball sort of halfway down the wicket. I was bowled up quite a slope. I got tonked for about 24 off the over, and we lost the game. And my dad was driving me home, and I was in tears and saying, "I'm not going to go back." And that's that. They won't want me back. That's enough. And he said, "No. That didn't go so well, but you have to go back. You will go back." I wasn't given a choice. And there's times when you put as much pressure as you can on, and I had to do that initially with Mo. When you recognise that something's right, but you have to. You can't. That's not sustainable. You have to make it something that's it's enjoyable for them, and every kid loves to do well at something. You tend to like the things you do well at. So that's not necessarily a difficult sell. I mean, there's lots of children that have gone through that you bump into in the street. It's that was Mr. Watkinson, how are you doing? And thank you so much for everything you did. There's a girl runner that actually went to a different school. And I was her borough manager and county manager, and she stopped me in the street and said, "You don't realise how much, you did for me." And I thought, well, Martha, I didn't really do anything. I just your borough manager. No, you really encouraged me, and I really valued and appreciated it. And you sometimes don't know the impression that you have on people, but I think if you do the right thing, you treat them well, you take an interest, then they do value it, and it does make a huge difference.
Alan, we have been knowing each other on a personal level for so long, but tell me something, or tell us something about Sports Impact, and it's one of the initiatives you have always been involved. Tell us about what makes it so special.
Okay, so back in the early 2000s, a lady called Baroness Sue Campbell, who is the guru for sport in this country, and she's got a book out called The Changemaker now, and she had just the impact she's had on sport in this country is just phenomenal. She was the reason we went from next to no medals in the Olympics to winning loads of medals. She was the person that transformed school sport, and the way she did that was she introduced, through government support and government funding and a government initiative, a thing called School Sport Partnerships. And the idea was that there'd be one hub site school in the borough or in an area that would take responsibility for the rest of the schools, and they would lead and drive sport in those schools. They'd have a member of staff in each secondary school that would be responsible for a cluster of primary schools. One of the real challenges at the time was that as we know, most primary school teachers are women, and the nature of physical education up until fairly recently, last 20 or 30 years, was very team sport based, and a lot of women didn't like that, and probably 10-15% of women enjoyed, or girls enjoyed the team sport element, but quite a lot didn't. And so you've got 85% of the population probably not enjoying it, and then all that population going into to teaching primary schools, and primary school teachers generalists, so they have to teach the PE as well. So they weren't confident in teaching PE. They didn't like PE. If they felt a drop of rain, they said, let's do some extra maths. The number of hours that were of PE the PE was taught in school was very low, and so the target was that every school had to do 2 hours of PE, but alongside that, we were going to make these teachers confident in teaching PE, and we were going to support them and help them to do that. And it was a brilliant transformative process that had some fantastic results. And then the direct funding to that was cut in 2011, the year before the Olympics, would you believe? So we had to become a traded service, so we had to sell our services to schools, but the schools had enjoyed the support so much that they felt they needed to continue with that. So Sport Impact was we were Eyes Within Zone School Sport Partnership, and then it became Sport Impact. So we thought we'd brand it and say that sport can have a massive impact on on people's lives, and we want to carry on doing that. So I've been doing that now heading that up for 17 odd years, and our philosophy is the same in terms of we want everybody to enjoy sport, we want everybody to have a chance at sport, but if we can drive that, so as a teacher I could do that with the children that are in front of me. In this role, I have the opportunity to have a team of people that can go out and work with all of the teachers, so that all of the teachers have that philosophy and more children can develop. So we've trained from the 2015 when we started doing evaluations, we've trained nearly 900 teachers. Wow. And of those 900 teachers, 99.5% have said that they have gone up a level in terms of confidence in teaching the subject. Now those 900 plus teachers are seeing 30 children every year. So the maths, if follow that maths through, hopefully those thousands and thousands and thousands of children are getting the benefit of that. And alongside that we have the access into different sports through different competitions that we run. So we run 70 plus events a year, and those events now, and this is a national initiative, are tiered into level 1, 2 and 3, so that those children that aren't confident in taking part in a competition, into school competition, can experience a festival, and they can experience they go and they might do a carousel of activities, and they might score the activities, they might not, but they go and they have fun and they meet other children from other schools and they see the power of physical activity to do things, and hopefully they gain in confidence. And then you've got the tier of children that desperately want to play for the school teams but aren't quite good enough, and they've never had those opportunities, and those are our tier 2 events. And the teachers are told not to pick their school best players, they're to pick the people that hopefully will get a better experience. And then the higher tier is the traditional competitive experiences that you might get, and we run all those. The other thing that we are heavily involved in is development of young people as sports leaders, and the transformative nature of that is phenomenal, as long as it's done in a way that is giving them a broader experience than just going and supporting one competition. We can do that, and they do get a benefit from that, but we want to develop them as leaders and give them more opportunities, get them to lead in the community. Prince is a classic example of that. One of the Middlesex Schools coaches, I don't know if he still is, but Prince went through a leadership program at our school, and I think he was leading mostly in athletics, but he gained the confidence to lead and to deliver sport to children, and became a coach, and since became a teacher. And so it's just Sport Impact is just one of these organisations in the country, and there are others that have survived the School Sport Partnership sort of removal of funding from School Sport Partnerships, and have gone on to thrive and do hopefully really great work in schools in the community, and partner with lots of organisations such as Middlesex Schools to support them to do that, because there's only so much you can do on your own. So we have partnerships with a whole host of different groups. We work with Brentford on the football, we work and we are a girls' schools football partnership. We work with Grasshoppers and Harlequins on the rugby, and a national rugby manager programme. We do that. We've got a relationship with Dukes Meadows tennis. We work with Royal Opera House on dance, and Middlesex Schools on cricket, and there are the list goes on. And through those partnerships, we can get more children involved in sport.
Fantastic. I think I remember when we first started speaking about it, I think one thing which brought us together was the passion and the understanding of how important is to have this school, how this sport introduced in school and played in school in a massive level. So when we started this, what were your first thoughts about how Middlesex Schools Cricket would able to help in this partnership?
Yeah, I think it's trying to get it's a symbiotic relationship in terms of our ethos and principles are exactly the same. So that's the great starting point. The next thing is we need to try and do something that is sustainable. So we have this we've had this thing in philosophy and education that you give school kids as broad an experience as possible, which is an absolute great philosophy. You want them to try lots and lots of different sports, but it's no good introducing them to American football or to baseball, and they get a passion for it and love it if there's nowhere for them to go with it. They go, yeah, it's great. Where can I go and play this? Well, you can't. You can play it a bit more in school maybe, but when you leave school, you're not going to be able to pursue it. And so unless those things are there, so you've got that footprint in the community, which is vital. And then the next thing is, which is the next stage really, is support the competitions, which is there, which is fine, but is the training of the teachers for the teachers to be able to pass on some of the experience you have to their children throughout their lessons, but also that relationship whereby a teacher can pick up the phone and say, this child's really interested in coming along and pursuing this at one of your sessions, and hopefully carrying on and doing more things. Or a parent comes in and says, where can my son play cricket or daughter play cricket? And they say, okay, there's the contact, get in touch. And the next thing that we're talking about is that training of teachers specifically in terms of the development of cricket. We've got a relationship with Live Golf that was just come out, and they've given out the schools, 10 schools, £2,000 worth of equipment and a whole load of resources. And we've got one of our staff going in and supporting that. And it's that sustainability that you can see is going to be continual, is always going to be there, that make people, they might not realise it initially, but down the line, actually we do have somewhere a pathway for children to progress. We do have that support that is going to help us to continue to do this. We are going to be interested in entering the cricket competitions because cricket is a sport that is accessible. And the other thing about cricket is I think it's like no other sport, and I don't think anybody's ever cracked this yet. In terms of the skills that you need in cricket, I think they're far greater than any other sport. The strategy, the plotting, the planning, the amount of time that you're out in the field, that you need to stay focused. If you drop a catch, you've got to pick yourself up again. And certainly as a captain of a cricket team, you've got so many things there's obviously the maths element as well. How many runs and over do we need? Where are we going to get them? Where can we pick up those things? I don't think we've ever really cracked the sort of thing that we've got, the game that we've got. We've never really cracked making the most of it. Certainly not in state schools.
I think the other part which we were looking at is the projects. Like we have started working on with Sports Impact, and just on Friday we had an amazing tournament, and we're in Hounslow and 12 of state schools girls teams came to play, and it was phenomenal to see 120 girls playing at the same time, with 5 different matches going on at the same time, with 12 of the school leaders you just talked about from Isleworth and Science School. I think they were immensely helpful, but the whole atmosphere, I could really resonate what you were talking about. And if somebody wanted to really see what it means of seeing that smile on girls' face, and or at the end of the festival or end of the day, they didn't want to go home. No. They said, can we have 2 more games? And that made my day. That is the kind of enthusiasm which we both envisioned, or we both thought of that it would bring. Yeah. And I'm so grateful that we had this started, and we were involved, and we could get that opportunity to work with you and Sports Impact to present this. And that those are the pieces which now I'm really look forward to. So what are the other projects or initiatives you are thinking of doing in coming year with generally in sports, but then we will talk about cricket as well.
Yeah. Just coming back to you on your gratitude to us. Actually, we're very grateful, incredibly grateful to you as well, because we could run a festival or competition in any sport, but it has much more meaning if it's delivered by people in the community that the girls can see, and they can see that there's a way beyond just going out and having that. I don't know if they've enjoyed it. There's somewhere else I can go and have some more fun. So that's that relationship is fantastic. In terms of sport impact, we're driven a little bit by, quite a lot by national priorities and national programs and national funding. So at the moment it's quite a disjointed system. So we know at the end of the last government we had primary sport premium. So each primary school got a sum of money to spend on the development of sport and physical activity, trying to get kids active for at least 30 minutes a day, getting their teachers trained, and then that money was for that. And a lot of schools have spent that well. Quite a few maybe, haven't spent it as well as they might have done. And there's no accountability to that funding. The only accountability is they have to put something on their website to say what they've done. More accountability is coming down the line, and there's a better tool for this year, but beyond this year there's no guarantee of that funding, so that funding might go on its current format, I think, for probably another year. There's the school games program, which is universal, which is the program that we run lots of our competitions from, but we only have to run 12 competitions from the school games program. We run 70 plus.
Wow.
So that is, they've given £23,800 for a 3-day-a-week role, and we've got 2 3-day-a-week roles. You can't pay a member of staff £23,800 and expect them to do the job that they are doing. It is far, it requires far greater skill that needs rewarding. So we have to find ways to get money to make sure that we have those people, and those people are able to do that job well. There is accountability in the school games, and there's a drive for more things to be done. So initially it was set up as just a competition program, and now it is about how do we get 30 kids, how do we get 30 minutes of activity, how do we get every kid involved, how do we ensure that the teachers are better, and for that amount of investment, it's crazy. I think there's 1.2 million goes into the borough in sport premium, and about 48,000 goes into the borough in terms of the school games. So we hope that nationally they take the infrastructure of what we have more seriously, that there's a strategic manager employed and nationally funded, and that the school games program remains funded. So our ambition is to do more of the same. Our ambition is to create as many opportunities for all children, to make sure all children are physically literate and have that that personal relationship with sport. And my eyes are focused a little bit on the Schools Active Movement, which I set up with a colleague in Lincolnshire. And one of our roles as Schools Active Movement, which is a voluntary organisation, is that we are lobbying and Parliament on a regular basis and working with the Youth Sport Trust, Alison Oliver, the CEO at the Youth Sport Trust, and Kate Thornton-Bousfield at AFP, to have a real voice in that what the national policy is likely to be. So I'm going to a round table at Westminster in June to discuss with MPs what it's like at the moment, and what it could be like if it was strategically better thought through. So that's the big picture.
No, there's a lot going on, but we at Middlesex Schools Cricket are really glad that we are associated with you, as well as partnering with you to find new solutions, because I think the most important part is we all know challenges. And I'm really glad that you have always spearheaded that emotion, passion, to find solutions with us. At a time as a guide, as a mentor. At a time we have come to you and say that, okay, this is what we can offer, and then we have sat together and worked out how the solution should look like. So we are really thankful for that that association, that mentorship, which we have offered till now.
Yeah, and I talk about what can be done to get a better national system. That is critical, but it comes back to the lessons you learnt from Mo, which is if that doesn't happen, we're not going to give up. We're not going to say, oh well, the government aren't giving us money, so we're going to give up on this. We're going to give up on the kids because we can't do it. Sorry, that's not on the agenda. That there has to be another way. So, where do we get the funding from if it doesn't come from government? There are other ways around things. There's always, there is always a solution, and we have to look at, what is the best solution that we can come up with, given the circumstances that we've got, and that's always got to be, our mantra. Even if we're flush with money and we're well funded, then we'll be, we'll strive to be as brilliant as we possibly can. If we're not, we're still going to be as good a job as we possibly can do in those circumstances.
Just wanted to cover that off, especially how do you look to engage underrepresented groups, particularly inner city areas such as Hounslow and some of the areas where girls program or local role models need to be there. How do you think that we should progress into it? Looking at your experiences and challenges you have seen across.
Yeah, I think there's a whole host of issues there, and I think one thing we've become pretty good at, I think, nationally is the issue around girls and women's sport. There's been a massive takeoff in that. You talk about the 12 teams that were at the Middlesex Schools and the Sport Impact Festival recently. We started to try and do girls cricket, and we were lucky if we got 3 teams. That's clearly grown. The FA have put in a program of girls football partnerships through sponsorship from Barclays, so that we can employ a member of staff a day a week to concentrate on that and meet targets that they have set on that. The RFU have sort of followed up with the first group of rugby managers, and we're one of the 12 partnerships nationally that have been awarded that, and you can see the difference that can be made if there's an absolute focus on it. One of the issues that has obviously surfaced recently is working class boys, and the neglect of that category of student through maybe focusing on other things, and the Andrew Tate issues and the issues around adolescence, the Gareth Southgate focus on that has brought that up as well. So there's countless groups and of people that are underrepresented, and I think one of the good things is that School Games has a responsibility to meet everybody's needs. We look at inclusion and disability as well. There needs to have the focus on that. So there are so many different ways, so many different things to look at, that you have to prioritise some of those things. But I think one of the other ways of dealing with it, as long as it's explicit and not just we can cover that, but is by saying that every child matters and every child is important to us, and if they're part of a group of children that don't like something, then we can do something for that group of children. But again, everything comes back to how we make them feel, and if they are in a group that aren't, why are that group not active? Why are that group not involved, engaged? What can we do? And I think with everything, you start small, and you try to grow it, and
absolutely. I think that is what we are also really excited about, because we want to now grow this idea, grow this success with our programs, with Sports Impact, to much wider areas, and we believe that no area should be untouched. And that's why we are also looking at expanding this into multiple boroughs and more organizations to join with us to push this revolution into it. And I think that's a way to go. That's our small contribution to get sports, especially cricket, introduced into state school and to both girls and boys of different demographies and different areas to come and start enjoying and learn from it.
Yeah.
I think in our sport it's quite interesting that there's the cost to entry, which a lot of the schools had mentioned. So what we've done is we've looked to partner up with different suppliers and things like that. And we've spoken to the schools to say, if you want cheaper equipment, we can get it sponsored or heavily discounted through them.
Yeah.
And luckily in our programs, like we've got pupil premium programs. So if people can't financially afford things, we've got kind sponsors like Javelin Commodities and Bharat Army Tours and Travels who donate funds, so that we're able to still take them on tours abroad for the county festivals and look after their clothing and everything out there. So I think the more we can do, you know, as an organisation ourselves and through your partnerships as well, to make it accessible, the better.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, it is. You know, what are it's not just the barriers to entry; it's the barriers as you go along, and somebody drops out. Well, why have they dropped out? You don't, you know. We don't know why they've dropped out, and you know, there might have been a way in which we could have prevented that if those barriers were not there.
Just knowing it, like say, without us coming together, the just sheer appreciation of the challenge, because a lot of these financial difficulties which families are facing are not really get discussed, or especially the organization which is focused on just sports and training. This particular collaboration has brought that to us, so it started making us more appreciative about the challenges a community is facing and possible solutions we can work. So because of our engagement, we are now working with lots of PE teachers, head of PEs, and head of schools to understand and offer some of these solutions there. And we are very glad that we have that engagement because of Sports Impact and our programs. Because now we can offer those scholarships, those opportunities to play matches, and as just Prash mentioned, sponsors our own, from our Middlesex schools. We are more than happy to contribute.
Yeah.
And finance should be the last piece or last concern anybody should have having a child playing cricket.
Yeah.
That's our philosophy. So having that appreciation and having right connectivity, especially with PE teachers and leaders, has helped us solve in a certain way that engagement issue.
Yeah, and I think it's getting to the point where they think they're so grateful for that because they really want to do it. Is I think is probably key. I mean, the other side to the coin is the parents that are a bit too pushy, and drive their kids away from the sport because they're trying to live their lives through their children, and have this ambition for them that they're going to be a professional cricketer. But that's the other side, and they can have all the money in the world, but if they're not wise to that, they're going to drive them away in the same way that they're driven away because their barriers are too steep. But the point of entry is really important, and what we do to engage the children and to let them know that there is a pathway here. This is not just a sport for people that have got money and go to private schools. It'd be interesting to see I'd be really interested to get your opinion on what you think about your experience about how things happen in other parts of the country. Because I played cricket in the Midlands and the North, and it just seemed a completely different game to when I came and played down in the South in terms of it being a passion. and something that everybody did, not just people that went to private schools.
I think every single county and organisation has a completely different signature of how they play, behave and stuff like that as well. But also chatting to county leads, you find the balance between state school and independent schools really varied. Like in our programme, maybe 2 years ago, it was about 60% state school. I think just after COVID, we entered Taunton Festival and we did really well. We were beating a lot of the major counties. And that team that we'd sent there were all state school, which was really interesting. So we had lots of compliments about it. And I think moving forward with the new programmes we've got where we can play independent schools, grammar schools, this is going to be really sort of transformational for a lot of children to get the extra games and learning opportunities. So Alan, obviously there is a slight difference between whether people have opportunities through the independent school system, grammar schools, and also the state schools. What kind of problems have you seen and what kind of solutions have you seen created?
There's a whole manner of issues with regard to accessibility for state schools to the game of cricket. The way that the state school system is set up and the amount of resource that the state schools have makes it very difficult for them. There aren't, and I know that it's not all private schools, but they don't employ a cricket coach, which a lot of private schools do. If you don't have a member of staff that absolutely drives cricket, or there's a culture of cricket in the school, it doesn't happen so much. I mean, Isaac and Zion has always had a strong culture for cricket, and they've always made sure that that's been maintained. A few years ago, there was a teacher there that was passionate about it, and every single cricket initiative that you could possibly imagine was on offer to those young people. But most state schools have 2 PE teachers for 2 male PE teachers and 2 female PE teachers, and if it's not their sport, it's actually quite a difficult sport to engage with and to teach. And this is just at secondary level, so they might enter a team, but then they've gone straight after school, and the light's getting bad. It's a game that takes a certain amount of time compared to other sports, and there isn't that necessarily desire for teachers to be there for 3 hours after the end of the other pressures that they've got in terms of exam results, and lots of PE teachers are doing pastoral roles and are drawing that. So the resource is huge, and the facilities at the school generally they're not going to have a decent facility. They haven't got Saturday morning cricket. They haven't got Wednesday afternoons that are dedicated to sport. So from the very start, they're on a hiding to nothing. And in terms of the solutions, it is to have that relationship with a local club or with a local organisation that that can drive it, because and I think if you put a lot of effort in in the early years, certainly secondary school, year 7, year 8, by the time they get to year 9 and 10, hopefully the ones that really love it are engaged with cricket outside of school, because the summer term is so short as well, and there's exams that are there as well. I think the obviously our cricket professionals are tending to come from the private school system, because things are driven that way. And I've heard anecdotally that county coaches have been heard to say, "Oh, we're going to pick this player over this player because they're going to go to a private school and they're going to get more exposure to the sport and a better opportunity to develop to the school child that goes to the state school, who will rely solely on his club cricket." And that's disheartening and disappointing. And I think from a state school perspective, having been to a state school myself and witnessing the county systems, I think it is demoralising for children from state schools, and is damaging when they are potentially on a par with children that are getting selected and they're not, because so I think that something does have to happen at county level and above to try and redress that, or something has to happen with the game, because there's not an incentive there, and only, I think you said 0.1% of children get to become professional cricketers, and unless they're very, very good, they're not going to make much of a living out of it, unless they're playing in the IPL or one of those leagues. They're not going to make a lot of money out of it, but they do get so much more out of the game that is important and that we should strive for. And it's not about them becoming professional cricketers; it's about them becoming really great people that have loved the sport. They go to university, they instantly got 11 best mates because they've got a sport that they're passionate about and enjoy and want to do well at. So I think we do have a massive job of work to do to encourage more state school children to get into the game. And I think probably the best way to do it is through relationships with primary schools, and having that pathway to something that is really enjoyable for them outside of school, and that the teachers have that relationship with Middlesex schools, that they think there's a real purpose for doing this in our lessons, because we can get 10 girls and 10 boys to go and do more sport down the road at Nishcombe, and that's half of our job done. And we were always successful as a school that I would have been a PE teacher at, in terms of winning competitions, but it wasn't because we drilled them and trained them, because we had other responsibilities, and our responsibility was to the whole cohort of schools. But we knew if we took them to Hounslow Athletics Club, they would be the best triple jumper or javelin thrower in the borough, and we didn't need to do that job. That job would be done for us. And I remember very, very vividly an old sort of PE teacher in the borough saying, "Oh, we can't compete against this school. It's just an athletics club." And it's not the school that's the athletics club, it's the athletics club that was the athletics club. Well, you can compete, you can send your kids there, but you don't. Why don't you?
I thought it's really interesting, because we last year, just as an experiment, we contacted Oxfordshire, right, and we had our first ever state school players against their state school players. We had that fixture. Yeah. Probably about 2-3 weeks ago, we met with Surrey, and we were talking about decision making, and it was almost the opposite of what you'd said in that particular instance. So I've spoken to other county coaches that say a similar message, but it was fascinating, because what they were saying is, we've got two children here, one's from state school, one's from independent school, very similar abilities, but they were of the opinion, actually that child's had far less opportunities. They've still got to that level, and they've got so many other life skills and things that they've developed. Actually, that's the horse we're thinking of backing here. I thought it's a really interesting way to look at it. And now we've got like the ACE system that they started, which encourages state school children and people of Afro-Caribbean and Asian communities, to get opportunities. But next year, hopefully, it looks like we'll even start a state school fixture against Surrey State Schools. They've started their own programme. I really hope that more counties take this on board, because there's plenty of opportunities we can create if we're willing to put in a little bit more effort.
Absolutely.
Which is also the other point is, it's great to have base level competitions, but there is so much to learn from the higher quality, higher level competitions at a county or a regional level. And the learnings and the leadership and life skills, perseverance and other aspects which you learn from that high quality games and game-based learning opportunity, I think that is being missed, and state school children are not getting that opportunity to play at that level, which will enhance their ability, but also it will give appreciation to children as well as coaches from a private school, that once right environment and opportunities are given, they can perform not only well, sometimes go beyond. And this is what our both of our mottos are, because we seek a lot of passion and hunger in the players at the state school, but they are not competing and they are not getting trained properly at that level. And our initiatives are all about removing those barriers. I want to give a shout out to Tiffin's Grammar School, and we had a discussion with them, and we just last weekend we had a game against them, and they decided to play, and it was a massive success for our state school players to play on Saturday.
Yeah.
This is so simple and so obvious for grammar schools or a private school children to play on a Saturday, but that facility is not available for state school, and we are very glad that the school wholeheartedly appreciated this initiative, and we had our first games, and we are really looking forward for more of this opportunity with other private schools, so that state school players are getting opportunity to play at that level. We are definitely very much forward in terms of scholarships, giving opportunity, even in terms of help in equipment and other aspects. So we are seeing really great acknowledgement. So there is support, but I think that we still need to do a lot of work in order to reach out to do that.
That's one of the things that I think I really like about Middlesex Schools as an organisation, is it's that bridging that gap between the recreational element of the sport to the higher levels of the sport, and if that's not experienced, people don't experience that level of competition, then they're not going to aspire to it, and if they don't see other people that have done it, it does become an awful lot more difficult. And once you get to 14, 15, 16 and you're still in the game, then you can play adult cricket, which is fine. But if you haven't had that experience of playing on a Saturday all the way through, that's maybe not something that you think that comes more naturally, unless there's that little push into the game.
So Alan, we have been playing at regional, borough, county level game opportunity. We call them as game-based learning, because every game is a learning opportunity. How do you see that creating more of this opportunity to play at that upper level, especially with private schools, especially with any games which are higher in standard, 40 and 50 over games, because it is a longer format game and it is much high skill game, would help generally not only a cricket but also state school participants to grow further in cricket. And how do you think that would affect the talent pool in a positive way? To have even more athletes trying to go towards the pro level.
I think it's almost basic mathematics, isn't it? That the more people you've got involved in the sport at a lower level, and the more opportunities you've got them to go through the pyramid, the wider the pyramid is, then it would naturally follow that with that greater talent pool, you'd have greater success internationally. And I think one of the important things here is recognising the different formats of the game. And when you talk about club cricket and the Saturdays and the Sundays of club cricket, you're talking about 40 and 50 over and more games, and that's potentially a breaking point for state school children that haven't had the experience of playing the longer format of the game, because they might enjoy going out on a Friday night and playing a 20 over game against a local club, and that takes 3 or 4 hours or whatever. But actually, the thought of the whole of the Saturday playing a 50 or more over game that they've not been prepared for with adults is potentially quite a daunting experience, and giving them experience of that would make that transition easier. And Tom, my son, having gone through that, has found it easier to transition into playing adult cricket or playing under 21s cricket, because he's had that experience. So the more people that, and the people that love cricket would love to be out there for 50 overs, bowling, and just love to be involved in the game, just fielding. It's every opportunity they get. And I was, growing up, I started playing adult cricket from an early age. So the more opportunities they've got to play that format, then can only benefit them individually and their opportunities, but also nationally. We are going to get more children coming through from state schools, and that ratio of state school to private school success will hopefully get into a more positive framework from the state school perspective.
And I think we are at Middlesex Schools Cricket are very passionate about this subject, and I think we all know the challenges, but creating those solutions is what we both are very focused on. In our opinion, if the more and more private schools and other entities come forward to play that, we have seen immense evidence and anecdotal evidence is when our teams are playing from age of 11, 12, 13, and they get used to playing 40 over 50 over game. Their transition to adult cricket has become so smooth, and their quality and their skill levels have gone so massively up by doing that. If we are on a mission to push this, and we need help from all of the possible private schools, grammar schools, and state schools, of course, to bring that together. And we want to be enablers of it. I think there is huge potential to push this. I know we all talk about challenges, but with Sports Impact and with our initiatives for school cricket, I think there is a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
And we are really passionate about moving that forward. So with you, we would like to also appeal to our audience that have a look at it, and if you have such opportunities where we can collaborate, we are more than happy to listen. Please reach out to the information below, and we'll be more than happy to sit down, talk with schools or any other organizations who wants to collaborate. And that's really a mission for us.
Yeah, and that's great, because it's it is something that is a transformational program rather than something that we can do this, let's do it, and something be sort of just a transactional thing. So that's music to my ears, and will be music to the ears of the staff at the school, and hopefully beyond to the teachers. And I think it's going to be it's a really interesting time, with franchise cricket and the relationship between that and Test cricket, and the relationship between that and the county game. It's just, I think there's going to be some form of revolution coming down the line, and I just hope that the authorities get that right, because it's a tricky one.
Well, look, Alan, it's been wonderful having you on the podcast. You're absolutely engaging and amazing. We really appreciate your time. I just wanted to thank you ever so much from all of the team at MSC.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.